We're going to go over constraining sketches with dimensional constraints. And so I have a sketch on my screen here that has some geometric constraints applied to it. And so you can see that if I move some of these lines, that there's definite restrictions with some of the geometry. And so you can see we have equal constraint, a vertical constraint, a perpendicular constraint. So we have a lot of constraints with this. But what we're looking to do with any sketch geometry that we make within our CAD system is to eliminate all of the degrees of freedom. And so what that means is we want to eliminate ways for this sketch, in this case, to be manipulated. And so I can do that with geometric constraints. And the second way I can do it with dimensional constraints. So under Create, I have a sketch dimension tool. If I hit Escape on my keyboard and go ahead and click that tool, and let's say I just click this baseline here. So if I click that baseline and drag it out, I get a dimension. In this case, I'm going to type in a dimension of 10 and type enter so that we're going to make that baseline 10 inches. And what I want you to notice, what happened when I did that, is the sketch lines in our sketch turned from blue to black. And so this line here has turned from blue to black. So if I undo that really quickly, you can see these two lines are blue. If I add that sketch dimension in and make it 10 inches, these lines turn black. And so what those black lines tell us within Fusion 360 is that that geometry is now fully constrained. And so what that means is I can't click and drag this anymore, all right? I can't make this width bigger or smaller than 10 inches. It's always going to be that. And so that's how another way we can constrain geometry within Fusion. And so I'm going to go ahead and add some other constraints to this. If I click that dimensional constraint tool and I click this point and this point, I can come in here and add a dimension. And so I'm going to make this dimension 2 inches. And again, you notice that I have achieved another black line, which means that now this line is fully constrained. I can put a dimension up here. Let's make that one 3 inches. Again, you can see that when I constrained that this line, these two lines have turned black because now they will always be 3 inches apart. We've constrained it that way. I'm going to go ahead and click this line here, drag out that dimension, and let's make that 3 inches as well. You can see that. Next thing I'll do is go ahead and click this line right here. If I do that, notice that it says adding this dimension will over-constrain the sketch. And so what that means, what I'm trying to do in this case is constrain this sketch in a way that is not possible. And so what it's telling me with that parenthesis on this dimension is it's not possible for this dimension to change. It's always going to be 3.5. And so there's no reason that I need this dimension on my sketch other than if I just want it to reference the size of that. And the reason that is because I've already defined this width as 10 inches and this width as 3 inches. And so because these two lines already have the geometric constraint of equal to them, they are always going to be 3.5 inches because that's the only amount of dimension we have left for it to be. And so that's why that dimension can't change. If I go ahead and click another one of these dimensions, if I click this point here and then I click this point, I can bring that dimension up, and let's go ahead and make that dimension 3.5 inches. Now let's change that. Let's make it 3 inches. And so notice when I do that, it changes that dimension. So you can see that I can add that dimension here, but that's not necessarily what I'm going for in my sketch. because now it's not possible for my sketch to be symmetrical. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. So I'll right click on it and say delete, and I delete that sketch. Notice how I can still move my geometry a little bit here. If we look at this, one of the dimensions I still need is a height dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and click here and here. And I can give this sketch an overall height of, let's just say we want to make this 6 inches. I can go ahead and do that. And you can see now that all of the lines in my sketch have turned black. And so what that means is now my sketch is fully constrained. All right. And so last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and apply a last dimensional constraint from this point to this point. So if I do that, I'm going to make it 3 inches. You can see how the sketch is now constrained. Notice that when I try to add this dimension, it won't let me because it's over constraining it because those parts are already equal. And so the last thing that I have to define is this width dimension here. If I put that in at 2 inches, you can see that now I have a totally a sketch that all the lines are black. It's fully constrained. And so that's what you're working towards. So you can use these dimensions and the geometric constraints on here to create your fully constrained sketch.